Hello everyone! What's up fellow gamers? Welcome to the League of Legends patch 10.23 rundown, also known as Preseason 2021. There were about 6 specific champion changes, and otherwise about 3 hours of item changes into League of Legends. We're going to talk about what that means, about what you can and can't do, and trying to figure out how good items are. And I'm going to do my best to kind of chunk this into a few different sections, because the patch notes are in a couple different sections. We're doing this one live to Twitch. For those of you on YouTube, of course, you're just watching the YouTube video, but you might see me interact with Twitch chat. For those of you watching on Twitch, of course, you're already watching it. But I'm going to basically stop between sections to do some level of Q&A. And so if you're watching on YouTube and want to skip past that, that's fine, but it might be helpful. So let's get into it. Okay, so patch 10.23 is the big shop update. There's a really great UI UX update to the shop, as well as a whole bunch of new and reworked items. There's some stat reworks, and we'll kind of cover them all as they go. Okay, patch 10.23 is at time again. It's preseason. Yes, we are excited. Let's get into it. There's a gameplay spotlight, which is cool. So yes, we've got mythic items, we've got item updates, we've got some new skins. Shout out everyone who got Victorious Lucian. Good job, you made it into gold. A bunch of Battlecast resistant skins, item shop refresh, all cool stuff. So there is a new item shop. It was designed with a few different goals. We wanted to create a streamlined, data-based recommended items experience. And that is basically, they are going to just scrub through all League of Legends games from the last patch, or maybe current patch, I'm not sure, and just say, okay, what is the most commonly built mythic? Here, let me just recommend you a mythic. Like, everyone buys Luden's Echo. Here you go. Just buy it. Go have fun. So that, I mean, this is a good thing because it doesn't mean that designers have to keep updating stuff every few patches, or playtest team or whatever. It is not necessarily the best build, but you can at least be a meta slave. And that's actually, I think, solid, because the entire point of recommended items is, I don't know how to play this champion. I don't feel comfortable making my own decisions. I want someone more experienced to make decisions for me. And everyone else playing the champion is more or less that. It doesn't mean it's the correct build. We have seen builds flip and be better at different points down the line, but you at least get what everyone else is doing, so you're not picking that terribly. I think it's a good solution. Improve the usability of the all items view, because they're going to have basically sub-tabs, which is pretty exciting. Maintain the ability to use and import item sets. Big pog. By the way, your old item sets are definitely garbage. Delete them. I did yesterday. And update the visual look and feel to match the evolving aesthetic. Yes, indeed. As always, keeping your ears to the ground. Okay, cool. So here is what the shop looks like. It's beautiful, right? There's the recommended section, which is, here are some possible options. Like, these are all, okay, interesting. So the recommended, the suggested up here, are actually just all of the mythics, right? These are the three mana using mythic items. These are all the 3 items that build out of Lost Chapter. Luden's Tempest is burst damage. It's got flat pen, right? And they're saying, hey, Cassiopeia and Senna are the squishies on the enemy team. That's pretty true. Here's Leandri's Anguish. It's gonna be good against the high HP champion of the enemy team, which Cassiopeia and Camille, yeah, kind of are. And then, hey, Everfrost lets you CC people or root them in place, which, I mean, Cassio's a good option. I would say Camille's maybe not because of hookshot, but whatever, right? They're doing their best to, try to find ways to index champions. I'm sure this could be improved, but it's also okay if it's only 25% good, because this is not really what you need it for. But they're saying, hey, here's what your mythics might do, and here's what we think they might be good against. I think that's fine. I just find it interesting that Camille, it's good against Cassiopeia in all 3 cases. There's a good chance this is actually just a Photoshop mockup. I don't think that's true. But actually, it almost certainly is a Photoshop mockup, to be clear. It almost certainly is, because you can see that this seems purchasable, and they have 500 gold. It's fine. I mean, this is still a really cool thing. I like this. I'm glad boots are on a tab. I'm glad potions are on a tab. Overall positive. All right, the recommended items page displays relevant items for your champion based on where you are in your build, who you're against, and how the game is progressing. It's meant to provide a quick way for you to understand what comes next in your journey to Plus Ultra. Yeah, so definitely agree, right? So we have data-driven recommendations based on what's popular. Item advice, is it good against a specific opponent? Like, do I buy Zonias against Camille? Do I buy Zonias against Zed? Do I buy Banshees against Karthus? That's going to be there. That'll be pretty solid. Generally all around good choice, because a death cap is just kind of always good. If there's a Mundo, it'll recommend Relonomicon. That's pretty popular. That'll be really positive. I'm a fan of that. Again, commonly built stuff just down here. Hey, if you just need to go through 15 options, here's some stuff. And you're like, what do I buy? Just pick one. I think it's reasonable. I'm okay with that. I think it's solid. All right, let's move on. The all items tab, you can click all items. This is almost, they're clicking what gives me AP and mana. This is already out of date because it's a 3rd AP mana item. That's a mythic. So whatever. Again, this seems to be a Photoshop job. But that's fine. That's whatever. But yeah, you can tag, hey, show me AP and mana items. Get me in there. What can I get? That's cool. Yeah, so you can pick a bunch of tabs out here. You can pick classifications up here. I am curious, by the way, how class tabs are going to work for someone like, say, Yasuo, where he's half into fighter and half into marksman. Yone kind of the same. I'm not sure if these tabs up here, right? Fighter, marksman, assassin, mage, tank, support. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work for champions that are kind of hybridy. Like, what does Ivern click? And maybe Ivern doesn't get to, but I think it's really, really, really okay if it's only perfect 75% of the time. Like, if I'm playing Karthus, I can click Mage and we're good. Like, I don't have to click a different tab. We're okay here. If I'm playing Ashe, almost always I can just click Marksman and we're good here. I'm not going to need to go buy Rand wins or anything. So this is going to be pretty solid in most cases. And that's fine. Like, automated solutions, I think, you hit diminishing returns really, really, really fast. And so I'm happy with, like, generally correct stuff. Clicking stats here, like give me attack speed, give me attack damage, give me crit, that's going to be positive. Okay, so the all page is where you go. There's class tabs, there's a recommended tab, there's stat filters. Yes, indeed. Okay, beautiful stuff. All right, clicking on the recommended stuff will raise your elo. Yeah, maybe a little bit. All right, we got quick buy panels. Yep, so the potions, shoot out. The boots shoot out. Cool stuff there. Great. Consumables tab, boots tab. You can see what's in your inventory because that's no longer in that UI. Duplicated. Okay, fine. And all right, we've got mythic items. So those who are not following, mythics are intended to be the first item you buy. You don't literally have to, but you probably should. They are somewhat intentionally overtuned, and they have you can only ever buy one. You can never ever ever buy more than one mythic. They are usually a little bit build defining. They usually have shared characteristics among the mythics for your class. So for example, all of the tank mythics have a Balmy Cinder in them. Every single tank mythic gives you the Immolate aura. Every single marksman mythic gives you crit chance, AD, and attack speed. Because, of course, those are the three stats you care about as a marksman. Every, mana using mage mythic gives you ability power, mana, and ability haste. So it's like, okay, this is just how it is. Like, these are what you're getting. This is how it works. I think that's a positive thing, but they have usually fairly distinct actives. We'll get into that in a little bit, but that should generally be a pretty big positive. And so right before we go into mythics, I will take a quick look if there's any interesting questions in chat and then move on. Freak will recommended build paths take into account swaps in chant select when suggesting items based on matchup. I don't think so. Here's the thing, as my understanding, when we look, it was in the preseason rundown video up top. It will show things like, hey, do you want to buy Zonias? It's good against Zed. Do you want to buy Banshees? It's good against Karthus, or do you want to buy Void Staff? It's good against Maokai. And you can decide for yourself. Do I care more about Karthus or do I care more about Zed? The game is probably not going to say, hey, who have you laned against the most for the last 5 minutes? Okay, now I'll recommend you something. It's going to look at the comp and say, they have an assassin. I'm going to put Zonias in the rec tab. They have a burst mage. I'm going to put Banshees in the rec tab. That's how it's going to work, and it's up to you to make that decision. I would be surprised if it was hard leaning into what lane you're playing into. That's not the important part. What's important is the enemy team comp. It's not going to be like, oh, Zed's 12-0, let's move Zonias up the priority chain. I'm going to guess. It's probably just Zed exists, here's Zonias. So I think that's pretty positive. Overall, I think that's going to be solid, and we're going to move on. So, mythic items, they have animations, that's fun. They are unique, only one at a time. And the other special thing that mythics do is they've actually now hard classified items into 4 types. So there's components, and this is, longsword, BF sword, whatever. There are epics, and epics are just like your generic 1,000 gold combined item. So this is Balmy Cinder, Kindle Gem, Executioner's Calling, Fiendish Codex, Lost Chapter, Warden's Mail, Bramble Vest, the random, sort of garbage one. Well, actually, they're usually not garbage, but the random 1,000 gold items that you just tend to buy, those are epics. Those aren't special either. Components and epics don't really matter for classification. We talked about mythics, right? Mythics are unique to your build. They are special. And then everything else, everything that costs 2,500 gold to 3,200 gold or whatever, but anything that in that size, the Titanic Hydras of the world, those are legendaries. And your build should generally at the end of the game have a mythic, some boots, and then 4 legendaries. And so this is the part that mythics now interact with. You buy a mythic, and then it gives all of your legendaries about 200 gold worth of bonus stats per legendary. So it's like, oh, we're going to give you 100 health and 5 AD for every legendary you buy for the rest of the game. Not specific to this mythic, right? This is the health AD mythic. This is the durability mythic, so it gives you health as you buy more legendaries. And that's you know, it's again different per mythic. Some of the mythics are here's lethality or flat magic pen. And then it scales with the legendaries you buy, so it can keep scaling over time. This is the percent magic pen mythic, so it's going to scale percent magic pen for every legendary you buy. And so you not only like buy a like usually a unique active as you buy your mythic, but it's also like, oh, what stat line I'm going to keep scaling up as I buy legendary tier items. Alrighty, so now we go into the beginning of our real mythic items. Let's go. Okay. We get Gale Force. All right, so Gale Force is one of 3 marksman mythics. Gale Force gives marksman champions way to dodge skill shots or aggressively finish off low health targets. It's Proto Belt with like RE ultimate smart targeting. It's actually a one charge of RE ultimate. Like generally speaking, that's what it is. One thing is also very good, and I will start to go into like my nitty-gritty stuff. I absolutely love when items that are meant to compete with one another have the exact same cost and as similar of stat lines as possible, because you are trying to remove as many possible points of decision making to concentrate decision making on the points that matter. I will state that in a slightly better way. The fewer ways Gale Force differs from the other mythics, the more you're looking at just the actual differences that matter for making your choice. Like Gale Force gives you a dash, the other items don't. If Gale Force is also 500 gold cheaper, that would be a different decision point. Like, oh, do I need the cheap mythic? Not do I need the dash mythic? But the interesting choice is, do I need the dash mythic? So I am glad that these all cost the same. They give very, very similar amounts of stats. And so, as with all of these mythics, they give attack damage, attack speed, and crit chance. Gale Force is the middle option. There's a new item called Noon Quiver. It's longsword, dagger. It's really, really, really OP. And cloak of agility and pickaxe. Actually, every single one of these mythics has the exact same build path for marksman. This is not true for other classes, but it's pretty close for other classes. So it's 2 longswords, a dagger, a pickaxe, a cloak of agility, and a combined cost. Noon Quiver is OP. You should try to get it first every time. We'll cover that later on down the line. But Gale Force gives you a dash. It is a fairly long cooldown, 90 seconds. This is certainly much lower than Flash, but it is about the cooldown of other ultimates. If you can get this in time to dodge ash arrows, that should be possible. It deals damage. So what's interesting is this is not consistent across all mythics. I'm kind of sad about that. But this is one way that they can actually help make marksman buy mythics first, is have the level scaling start at level 10. So no matter when you buy it in the first 10 levels of the game, it's 180 of the damage. And then it scales up to 315 as you gain your next 8 levels. Because you might get your mythic early on, and you're like, ooh, I don't want the 12 damage dash. I'm just gonna go buy Infinity Edge first. We're gonna buy this one later. So I'm kind of glad that all the marksman mythics actually have a level 10 start. I think it's actually a positive thing. And it's kind of nice because also most legendaries also have a level 10 plus scaling, because that's realistically in a lot of cases when you'll actually buy this item. And so it makes the tooltip make sense, because it's literally impossible to have Gale Force at level 1, except in practice tool. Yes, theoretically, if the entire team runs down mid 18 times and you get 17 kills and buy Gale Force, yes, it is technically possible. But let's be real, it's not gonna happen. And so I'm also a fan of tooltips that literally make sense. There's 2 things here. I know we're going a long way onto this one. It's gonna be a really long video, or set of videos. So number 1, the tooltip makes sense. It'll actually deal 180 damage at some point during the game, because you're gonna buy it by level 10. That's a good thing, right? That is a positive. The tooltip actually tells you what it really, really does in the game. So that's number 1. Number 2 is there is a design tenet that I actually, I learned from the original Borderlands. And I think it's actually a really positive thing. It's a really minor thing, but it's a really positive thing. And it's try to give players the biggest numbers possible. If this thing can theoretically stack to infinity, let it. Just tell them it stacks infinite number of times, because the idea of the infinite stacking X is exciting. It's fun. You read a tooltip and be like, it stacks infinitely? Let's go, right? Like, that's more fun. That's more interesting. And so the more you can just like show big numbers in tooltips, the better. So I'm also a fan of like this existing at some point. All right, it's got a bonus AD ratio as well, which means, by the way, it has 55 AD in it. So literally this thing immediately deals 200 base damage. I wouldn't actually recommend, like, this does 205 damage plus 40% bonus AD from other sources. That would be a crappy tooltip. But, you know, this is the real base here. And by the way, right, it's the kiting item, the Mythic, every legendary you get, which again, pretty much capped at 4 if you're not going to sell boots, is 3% move speed per Mythic. We then go into Kraken Slayer. Noon Quiver, Cloak of Agility, Pickaxe, a little bit more AD, a little bit more attack speed. Here's some crit chance. And this one is now a passive, right? It's basically Silver Bolts. It's every third basic attack, deals 60 bonus true damage with a 0.3 bonus AD ratio, which again means this is, 18? So it's 78 bonus AD, or bonus damage. Again, doesn't scale with champion level actually at all. To be fair, dashing doesn't really scale with champion level either. The damage, of course, does, sure. But hey, this is early and focused. Buy the Mythic first. The thing is online right now. And the Mythic, right, is here's 10% attack speed. Right, let's go. Yes, it definitely stacked with Vayne. It stacked with Kog'Maw. In fact, those champions are probably going to buy this stuff and then go buy a Rage Blade, and they're just gonna go really ham. I'm excited for that kind of stuff. And it's also not really Silver Bolts because there's no percent health damage, but this is 20 true damage on hit, which is very good. This is a pretty solid one, right? This is the very clearly, I want to deal the most damage possible. It has the most AD and the most attack speed of any Marksman Mythic. It also has the most, like, offensive stats of the Mythic passive. It clearly has the most offensive stats of the active, quote unquote active. Like, let's go. This is quite solid. And to be clear, like, even the biggest tank in the game is only ever gonna have like 4,000 health. So you can consider this to be 1.5%. Yeah, this is, you know, even a gigantic tank is 1.5% max health. That's not gigantic, sure, but it's 1.5% max health true damage, which isn't terrible. And the 30% bonus AD ratio, you know, if we consider a marksman is expected to have maybe 200 bonus AD by the end of the game, 200 bonus AD is another 60 on top, right? So now we're doing 3% max health true damage, even on a Cho'Gath on 6 items. That's not horrible, and there's ways to scale this further. So, okay, looks pretty reasonable. Then we have Immortal Shield Bow, 3,400 gold, Noon Quiver, Cloak of Agility, Vamp Scepter. So instead of Pickaxe, it's Vamp Scepter because Immortal Shield Bow is the durability item, right? Again, I am such a fan of how similar the builds are. The differences stand out. This is the Vamp Scepter Mythic, right? AD is lower, attack speed is lower, crit is the same. Every crit item is 20 crit, by the way. It has Lifesteal on it. Which, you know, obviously ups the value of the stats quite a bit because it's got a new stat on top of it. 12 lifesteal is quite solid, of course. And it helps you survive burst damage and fight back because it has Lifeline. So instead of going Phantom Dancer second or third, and that item is different anyway, you have Immortal Shield Bow. When you get into a game and you're like, oh, it's Pantheon Zed with a Shaco. Okay. All right, we're buying this item. Right? It's you look at this and you're like, I'm not living this game. We're rushing Shield Bow. We are rushing Shield Bow again. Level 10 start to the scaling. 250 is the first value right there. 250 is actually pretty solid. Scale up to 700, which is about where Phantom Dancer is on current live League of Legends. The 3-second long shield is not gigantic. It's the same kind of trigger sex drinker, would reduce you below 30%. You also get lifesteal for 8 seconds. That's pretty solid. So, you know, 12 becomes 27% lifesteal. And hey, the mythic passive is you get about 130 gold worth of health and about 150 gold worth of attack damage per mythic. So yeah, there's still a little bit of an offensive bent to it. But 5 AD is definitely worse than 10 attack speed as far as an offensive stat's concerned. And 50 health. So it's like, okay, I buy this and it's up to eventually 200 max health. It's up to eventually 700 health shielding. Like, this is the item you buy as a marksman. I need a mythic to live. And yes, it has the least damage, but it has the most durability. And so now, okay, give me a second. Let me figure this one out real quick. We have to close that tab. There we go. All right, we're good. We're back. Woo! Here we go. So here are our marksman mythics. Ignore this for now. We'll talk about it later. When we're going to go down a different topic. But so we have item efficiency for these items. And I want to point out a couple of things that are meaningful here. We're going to take a aside for a second. Okay, so these all cost 300 gold. Here are their stat lines, right? 55 AD, 20 attack speed, 20 crit, 60 AD, 25 attack speed, 50 AD, 50 attack speed, but some lifesteal. Right, so here's how efficient they are just on the stat line. But hey, look. Cloudburst and some move speed. The mythic passive for some move speed is pretty solid as well. You're going to get about 120 gold, in bonus stats per legendary. So very clearly this item is worth buying. It is efficient. feels pretty good. Kraken Slayer, because the offensive stats are so high, it's efficient just by itself in stat lines. Obviously, bring it down. Oh, it's actually, sorry, I guess it's 60 by 3. I was doing this on an old version of the notes, so there we go. Here's the actual value of this one. 10% attack speed, obviously pretty reasonable. 250 gold per mythic there. And I want to point out that not all mythics are made the same, right? If you look at these gold values here, 3% move speed costs 120 gold. If you're going to buy it looking at things like Zeal or Ether Wisp, even comparing it to the comparative move speed you get out of buying boots, the math lines up pretty closely. You know, then you have 10% attack speed, you have 5 AD and 50 health. Like, technically, Immortal Shield Bow has kind of the most gold stats of any item in the game, especially if you consider Lifeline as, you know, 250 shield and 15 lifesteal is theoretically worth 1,200 gold, but it's only worth 1,200 gold at that point in time, so, hey, maybe. On-hit damage is a bit maybe not, because it's true damage and we're not really multiplying this here, so maybe it's better than, you know, the math kind of brings out, but these are, you know, fairly efficient items, and there's not much more to say for now. We'll get into like more nitty-gritty stuff about how item efficiency works down the line, but for now we're pretty reasonable. Okay, I think those items are cool, and I think you have a pretty obvious sort of decision tree among when you buy them, right? Do I want the mobility? Do I want the single target damage? Do I want the durability? And that's just going to depend on what kind of game you're in. I think that's pretty reasonable. So now we go into the tank mythics. And there are kind of 3 tank mythics, but keep in mind that the support mythics often have tank stats on them, and so there's actually a bit more for tanks down the line. But let's go with the pure tank mythics. These are the things you'll buy on a Mumu, on you know, top Maokai a lot of the time, on top Malphite, mid-set if you're going to play tank set. This is reasonably likely here as well. These are the selfish tank items. These are the selfish tank items. So we have Sunfire Aegis. As I said, all 3 selfish tank mythics all have Balmy Cinder out of them. So 3,200 gold is the gold cost of tank mythics. Now, we saw earlier that marksman mythics cost 3,400 gold. Tank mythics are the cheapest of the non-support mythics because Riot is aware that there are, in fact, tank supports who might go selfish, right? You might see Leona go for something like this instead of, let's say, Locket. There is a possibility, at least, that you do it. And so it's a little bit closer to the same price point, so it's a little bit easier to choose. I'm glad that Riot made this choice to design it this way. I think it's a very good thing. And every item, every tank mythic, builds out of Balmy Cinder, plus at least 1 Cloth Armor and at least 1 Null Magic Mantle. Now, in Sunfire Aegis' case, it builds out of Aegis of the Legion, which is still Armor plus MR on a combine, but that combine actually gives ability haste. So Sunfire Aegis is all about ramping threat, right? Threats on enemies with extended fights. So we have, this is the most health of any tank mythics. It is the lowest combined armor and MR. It has the most ability haste of tank mythics. And we get Immolate, okay? Immolate is 20 to 40 plus 1% bonus health. Again, I really would have liked the level 10 scaling. Different designers and different mythics, basically, right? Like, one designer had marksman mythics, one designer had tank mythics. I would have really liked to see a level 10 scaling here because, again, you are not getting this item before like level 8. So I really would have liked to see it just be like, oh, it's actually 25 to 40 because that's the real numbers, right? I think this could be improved on a very, very not important, just tooltip level by just doing it this way. Really minor thing though. Magic damage per second to enemies around you, increase 50% against minions, and increase to triple against monsters. Right? This is really intended to be like, hey, by the way, you're playing a Mumu jungle, buy this item, get through your jungle camps. Because now it's doing 60 to 120 against monsters. That is a lot of damage. Damaging champions or epic monsters with this effect. So epic monsters are Dragon, Baron, Rift Herald. That's it. And then, you know, Elder Dragons. But yeah. Adds a stack, increasing damage by 12% for 5 seconds, max of 6 stacks for 72% increased damage. So 40 becomes like 70 something. Pretty solid. At maximum immolate stacks, your basic attacks burn enemies. So once you get all the way up, damaging people with this effect adds a stack, which means kind of by definition, this must take 6 seconds. After 6 seconds, your attacks now also, bam, burn nearby enemies for your immolate damage per second for 3 seconds. So if they get away, they're still going to take 70 damage, 70 damage, 70 damage, right? So if they jump away from you, you literally got 200 damage against them. Okay, yeah, at level 18, sure, but this ignites them for like a pretty solid amount of damage. That's actually pretty good overall. And it grants other legendary items 5 ability haste. So this item is up to 35 ability haste. We'll talk about that later. For now, just mentally shortcut ability haste with cooldown reduction, and it's close enough. This item has kind of, not really, but kind of 35 CDR on it. Frostfire Gauntlet. So, again, Balmy Cinder, no Magic Mantle, but this is the armor-focused one. It's Chain Vest. Now, personally, I don't actually really love the, this is the physical skewed one, and then the other one down the line is the magic damage skewed one, because I don't think... Because, I mean, just to me, it's like, I think Immolate and Snowbind and stuff are what you're actually choosing, not am I laning against Aatrox versus Kennen. It's not a huge deal. It's a difference of, the armor, right, changes by 20 and the MR changes by 5. Like, it's not a gigantic deal, to be clear, but I still don't love it. Either way, let's move on. Frostfire Gauntlet slows enemies, okay? So, still has 15 ability haste, interestingly enough, even though you're not building any ability haste in the recipe, but that's fine. They want to keep similar stats. I get it. Sure, whatever. Okay. So it has Immolate, but this one does not ramp over time, right? So Sunfire Aegis is the ramping threat item. Frostfire Gauntlet is not the ramping threat item. It's just you have Immolate, right? It's the selfish tank item to give you wave clear so you can kind of fight back for the waves. I actually really do think this is important. I mean, basically every tank in the game who plays top lane buys Sunfire Cape. I think it's a totally reasonable choice to make for the designers. But hey, by the way, your basic attacks create a slow zone for 1.5 seconds on a 4-second cooldown. Enemies that move across the zone are slowed 30%, and this slow percent scales with max health. So attacks create a slow zone. Based on my reading, and I'm sure anyone who played on PvE can tell you with more certainty, this basically is Iceborne Gauntlet. Without having to cast a spell in the first place, this is some guaranteed lockdown. The uptime is nearly 50%. There are actually ways of getting item haste that affect passives like this one. So you can actually lower this cooldown lower than 4 seconds. You probably can't get it to 1.5, but you can lower this cooldown overall. All of the legendary items give you 100 more health and increase your champion model size. So you're the big thing. You're in the way. Now, it's possible that Snowbind actually creates this low zone around you. Again, I didn't play on PvE. I could be wrong. I'm sorry about that. I'm sure someone in chat can tell me. And yeah, we'll see. I think it's Iceborne Gauntlet, but I'm reading chat to make sure that I'm not wrong about this one. Either way, I mean, this is very clearly that let's try to lock things down. Seems pretty good. I'm asked does this work on ranged champions? If it's Iceborne Gauntlet, theoretically, but keep in mind, Immolate is still selfish around you. That's not particularly incredible. It is Iceborne. Thank you very much. So it's Iceborne Gauntlet, sure, but I'm thinking of like Ezreal, and it's less CDR. It's a lot more defensive stats, and you're not even getting sheen damage. Immolate is going literally to waste. I would say armor, health, MR is mostly going to waste on Ezreal as well. Yes, you do get a slow on auto attack. There is something there. This helps you, by the way, soak up skill shots because most things look at the edge of your model to do it, and the wider you are, the more you tank skill shots, right? It's also here is objectively more durability, so please go be in the front line. And the idea is you can't get past me, right? And that's the fantasy this item sells, right? This says, hey, I'm an inescapable behemoth. You can't get away from me, and you can't get past me. I'm tanking your skill shots. I'm taking your ash arrows. I'm hitting your front line. And now this guy can't walk past anymore to go catch. Like, Fizz has to go burn his playful trickster to get over the top of me. And now he's losing an offensive ability. Like, that's the goal here is you can't get past me. I'm in the way. This is the kind of Braum item you can kind of think about. It's a Tom Kent sort of item in a lot of cases. I think this is pretty reasonable. And I think it totally can fit that fantasy pretty well. I'm expecting most people to buy Sunfire Aegis because they want a duel, but I could totally see Frostfire being good. Turbo Chem Tank, I think, is the one that every jungler will buy. This is basically rebuilt Righteous Glory. So yes, Balmy Cinder, Cloth Armor, it's the MR-focused one. They all have 15 ability haste. They all have functionally the same roughly amount of stats. This is -5 armor, plus 20 magic resist. Same health as up here with Frostfire Gauntlet. And I want to be clear, like, you're not changing the stats by that much, right? 20 armor or MR is not really going to hard, like, bind your decision making. It's really not. It's not that big of a deal. It's fine. It feels a little cosmetic, whatever. But Again, it has the same sort of normal immolate. Again, scales from 1, which I think is a small mistake, but not a huge deal. Increase against minions, increase more against monsters. And it gives you Supercharge, which is the old Righteous Glory active. 75% move speed towards enemy champs or turrets for 4 seconds. Once you're near an enemy champion, or at the end of the duration, Shockwave emits, slows by 40% for 2 seconds. Obviously, this is way less crowd control than this. I mean, technically, the very beginning Shockwave, right? It's 40% for 1 point, or 30%. Well, okay. This has some health, so it's 35% or something for 1.5. This is 40% for 2, so technically the first CC is better, sure. But, 90-second cooldown, you're not getting a second one out of it anytime soon. But it is the I am going to get to you item. The legendary, the mythic passive, I think really lines up with this one, right? I'm going to run fast at you. Do you stun me? We shrug it off 20% faster. You do slow me? It's 20% less effective. Let's go. I'm getting there. I'm always a fan of when the mythic stat lines up well with the active. I think in all these cases it does. It does help sell the fantasy pretty well. It helps educate on what you're really trying to do here. I'm a big fan of this one overall. Yeah, I think this is all overall pretty solid. And it's Righteous Glory, right? Which means you are absolutely buying this one on every single tank in the jungle, I should say. I would really be shocked if junglers, like I'm thinking of, jungle Malphite, which I know isn't very common. I'm playing a lot of Amumu right now. So jungle Amumu is obviously a great option here. Just run at them and you can't miss Bandage House unless they flash it on prediction. Like Zac, yeah, okay, Zac wants to jump in, so maybe Zac actually goes for, Frostfire Gauntlet or something. I want to point out Frostfire does not have mana on it, right? They made sure that the manaless tanks are going to feel okay. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Rammus with this thing. Like this is great. Yeah, the CC kind of overlaps, but like, yeah, Rammus, Skarner. Like Skarner gets to get Righteous Glory early and not feel bad about it. Like that's great. That's pretty positive. Now, yes, Righteous Glory here is going to preclude Trinity Force. It's a mythic as well, but yeah, pretty solid. So, let's go look at our tank mythics, and we can kind of get them all on screen. So we're pretty happy with this one. All right, so we're spending 300 gold for these items in all cases, and we're getting 2,600 worth of stats in kind of all the cases. But the 2,600 has an asterisk by it because, well, we're getting some pretty obvious benefits here as well. So we're getting Immolate, and I priced Immolate at Balmy Cinder. Balmy Cinder costs, I think it's 200 gold for the combine to get 15 flat damage on the burn. Now I'm pricing these at 20 damage on the Immolate. Probably more realistically, the scales somewhat linearly. We're looking at like maybe 26 on the Immolate. And I can kind of change this for all of these just to like, change the price points here. But this is one of the weird things about trying to use gold efficiency as a real stat, because Balmy Cinder can just be hand-tuned to be a stronger or weaker item. And the weaker Balmy Cinder is, like the more you pay for the combine, the stronger these items are on gold efficiency. Because if Immolate costs 400 gold instead of 200 gold, well, suddenly this is worth 700, not 347. And it's like way more efficient as an item, despite it being the exact same item, but it was Balmy Cinder that got nerfed. Because Balmy Cinder got nerfed, Sunfire Aegis is stronger. That doesn't make any logical sense, and indeed it doesn't. Gold efficiency is not a perfect measure. It's an okay first step, but it can never tell you the whole story. Either way, yeah, tank mythics are not getting their price in raw stats, but of course not. They're getting Immolate, right? They're getting offensive damage back, which it depends on if you really consider Immolate worth 300 gold or not. I mean, if this was 26 damage times like what is on hit damage, it's worth 650, right? If this gave you 20 to 40 damage on auto attack and we're pricing it against recurve bow, it's this. Now that's obviously pretty troll, but like, is Immolate better or worse than on hit damage per point, right? Is 20 on hit damage better or worse than 20 damage Sunfire Cape? Gold efficiency says on hits twice is good. Do I believe that? No. But that's what item breakdowns told us, right? It's a very imperfect stat, and this is what we have, right? We can't do any more than this. It does kill wave manipulation. That's fair, right? It's much harder to like only go down single minions. Like that is going to be an impact, sure. And for what it's worth, there are tank E mythics that don't have Sunfire on them. They are the support mythics, but this is kind of the world you're in right now. Either way, this is kind of the world we're in. It's kind of hard to price all these out very well. I am pretty confidently pricing 5 ability haste at 100 gold. This lines up pretty well with my expectations and what I think the real game is doing. Similarly, 100 health is worth a lot more than that, though. And then you actually can backdoor tenacity and slow resist by using Mercury Treads and Boots of Swiftness. And it basically costs about 35 gold per 5%. Like that, it's actually true for both Merc Treads and Swifties. Now, do you actually value 5% tenacity as 35 gold? I don't know. I mean, literally being CC immune, like theoretically then, would cost like 3,500. Whatever. Pretend the math actually worked out. Like here, let's go 1 times tenacity. Yeah. So theoretically, 100% tenacity would cost 700 gold. I don't believe that. Literally CC immune costs 700 gold. Everyone would buy that, obviously. So, this is underpriced to some degree, but that's where we are. I don't know what to tell you. So, I mean, these definitely aren't giving you fully efficient stats. I mean, compared to the Marksman were at like 90, 95% in a lot of cases. The Kraken Slayer was actually over 100% just on the base item before Mythics and whatnot. But here's where we are, And it's like, how much do you value Snowblind? How much do you value Flame Touch? I don't know. But that's going to make the difference. I think it kind of does. I think it's a reasonable item. Let's move on to the Assassin Mythics. And Assassins have 3 or 4, I forgot. But we'll go into it. Duskblade, these cost 3,200 gold, by the way. So for whatever reason, Marksmen have the expensive Mythics, and then mana-using mages also have expensive Mythics, and the other ones are 3,200. It's a little strange. Fighters are at 33, I think. But let's go into it. Duskblade Assassins are going to spike slightly earlier because their Mythics are a little bit cheaper. I am curious if this was intentionally done. I know it was done intentionally for the tanks. I know this was intentional to help support tanks maybe choose to buy Turbo Chem Tank on someone like Support Nautilus. Like, makes total sense. I think it's a great choice. I am not sure if the idea that Assassins should spike slightly earlier was intentionally done. Either way, they are on the cheaper side. So here's where we are. All right, Assassins can keep enemies guessing while wreaking. I mean, it's supposed to be wreaking havoc. Invisible Havoc and Fight. Let's move on. I don't need to read these tooltips. It is Serrated Dirk, Caulfield's Warhammer, and a bunch of money. It is the exact same basic build as old Duskblade. All right, we've got attack damage, lethality, ability haste. It's basically CDR. It's close enough. And we get more ability haste for Mythic. So we're trying to do long duration fights here, right? Where we're getting multiple rotations of spells off. We're going to keep going, all right? Attacking a champion deals 100 bonus damage, slows by 99% for a quarter second. And when a champ you have damaged in the last 2 seconds dies, this cooldown is refreshed and you turn invisible. Now, I want to point out this does not have any ranged melee stat binding. I could totally see Vayne just being like, yeah, let's go invisible one more time. Let's go. Let's just do it. It has a bonus AD ratio, by the way, which, this is going to be 16 damage on top. So, 116 physical damage on the first item. But it refreshes the proc damage, which is, by the way, basically just like, this is less than what Rapid Fire deals. But obviously you're burstier as an assassin, and it scales lethality, whereas rapid fire is magic damage. And again, you turn invisible. So this is like, oh yeah, we're getting in, and we're gonna stay in, and we're gonna keep hard carrying as a physical damage assassin. I mean, this is obviously a pretty scary prospect, right? This is, can I 1v9 as Zed and go ham? This definitely, I know for a lot of people it's gonna be like, this is Giga broken. We'll see. Keep in mind, right? Marksmen get a mortal shield bow at the same time as this item. Like, they get to buy a shield for 2.5x this damage as their Mythic. I'm not convinced that it has to just hard win the game. I mean, we'll see, right? I could obviously be wrong, but obviously looks quite good. We have Eclipse. Weave in and out of fights and take down tankier opponents in drawn-out scenarios. So what's kind of interesting is Duskblade is already, like, kind of drawn out, right? It's, here's ability haste, here's some more ability haste, right? Reset on killer assist, but it's, I'm going to kill the target and then get the reset, and then kill the next target and then get the reset, and then kill the next target and then get the reset, right? It is a little bit differently skewed in terms of what you're doing. You're going to get this off maybe, if you're lucky, 5 times a fight. The cooldown is also 15 seconds, so it's also up basically every trading pattern in lane. Right? So if I'm trying to think of like if I'm Quinn, right? I can probably just like rush Duskblade and vault auto you and wait 50 seconds and do it again, right? There's a lot of like ranged trading pattern stuff here that's also going to work pretty well. Ability haste is not the best Quinn stat, to be clear, but you kind of have that going on, right? The better you can apply this, especially with a short cooldown, better it's going to be. There's going to be some abuses of Duskblade for sure. Okay, we get Eclipse, and it's, well, weave in and out of fights and take down tankier opponents. Okay, Serrated Dirk, Vamp Scepter, Longsword. We have still seen nothing but longswords in the builds here, but notice we're always using Serrated Dirk. This one's not using Caulfield's Warhammer. This has no ability haste at all. It's still 55 AD, it's still 18 lethality, but we're getting Omnivamp. Omnivamp is I heal from all sources of damage, whether it's attack damage, spells, you name it. Okay, so I'm going to Drain Tank somehow, but I don't have cooldown reduction, right? I'm still kind of relying on my burst and maybe relying on my auto attacks. Ever Rising Moon, hitting a champion with 2 separate basic attacks or abilities, which is pretty easy. Deals 8% max health damage, gives me move speed, and a shield. The shield is bigger on melee champions than ranged champions. About 50% bigger on melee champions than ranged champions. Also, the cooldown is very short on melee and a little bit longer on range. So this is basically a pretty static cooldown here, right? This is every 6 seconds, I chunk you, I shield, let's keep going. Now, I want to be clear about something, by the way. Right, 8% max health physical damage. So, like, if you're melee and you have Blade of the Ruin King, literally every auto is 10% current health damage. This is a 6-second cooldown, right? So if you auto even every 3 seconds, Ruin King is dealing more damage than Ever Rising Moon. Period. And that's like if they're at half health, it's still better. So in terms of like drain tanking a Maokai, like this still gives you the stat profile that you want to be Talon or Zed or whatever, but it is nowhere close to Ruin King in your ability to kill a tank fast. Now the shield is clearly good and helpful, right? The mythic is percent armor pen, so like clearly that is helpful. But I think you buy this because look, the upfront is reasonable, right? The upfront is okay. Yeah, I'm not getting the ability haste of Duskblade, but 8% max health on 1250 HP, right? 1250 is the breakpoint. That 8% max health is 100 from Duskblade. Now, of course, 30% bonus AD. Okay, eventually, if I have 300 bonus attack damage, which is very high, but I think possible, it doubles the damage output. It's 200. In this case, if they have 2,500 max health, this doubles the damage output. So this is generally going to be doing, I would say, more damage in more cases as a one-of. Like, just if it goes off at all, it's probably doing a little bit more damage than Duskblade. It's not slowing. You're not getting your ability haste. It's not resetting rapidly in a team fight. But it's going to chunk, one of those frontliners a little bit, right? And again, you're getting a shield to survive it. You're getting percent armor pen. This is another item that, I would probably still take Immortal Shield Bow if I'm a marksman, because this shield is 100 plus 0.3 bonus AD, and it's every 12 seconds. Like, that's... No. If I'm dying on Ash, it's because Fizz is one-shotting me. Shield Bow is, like, way better than Eclipse here. So I don't see this item getting poached very much. It may get poached by fighters. Like, I can see, like, a Darius buying this, and this is how they get through tanks. But you buy this item when you're saying, okay, look, I'm going to split push on Zed, but I know I'm going to be hard splitting because their team fight's too good. Like, they've got, I don't know, a bunch of Zhonya's users and a cannon or some crap. Like, I'm not sure exactly what you have to be too afraid of, but you're like, no, I'm hard splitting the entire game, and I'm hard splitting against the Maokai because their mid laner went Ignite. It's like, okay, you're hard splitting versus Maokai or Ornn or something, right? All right, I'm going to Eclipse this game. Makes sense. I totally get it. I think it's pretty reasonable. Again, caps at 16% armor pen. Not a ton, but not garbage. 18 lethality on top. Okay. And then we get Prowler's Claw. Prowler's Claw lets assassins get up close and personal with their prey, amplifying their damage for one fatal combo. So this is single target chunk. This is as long as I one-shot Orianna, we get there. So back to Serrated Dirk plus Warhammer plus gold. Exact same build as Duskblade. Stat line fairly similar. Less haste, more lethality. So I'm glad the stat skew is pushing towards one-shotting, a little bit less from sustained damage. Mythic passive, 5 lethality per mythic, so up to 41 lethality on the item in a full build. That is absurdly high. That is absurdly high. That is so much lethality. Holy moly, a full build. That is a ton. That is basically a full chain vest deleted from your inventory. That's real good. My active has a full 1 minute cooldown. It is simply cheaper than the marksman option, but dash through target enemy, dealing 100 physical damage. So exact same damage as Duskblade, but instead of a slow, it is a dash. And now for the next 3 seconds, you have 15% increased damage on the target. A easy, quick math conversion is roughly 1% more damage is 2 lethality. This is a very big generalization. This is not always exactly true, but you can kind of consider this one, not only one, does it turn on sudden impact, right? So it turns on the bonus lethality rune in the domination tree, but it's also kind of worth 30 more lethality. So this item is kind of worth like 58 lethality. Just by itself. Because it's worth 21, the damage amp is kind of worth 30, and it's going to turn on sudden impact. Like, the math is roughly that. Prowler's Claw is kind of 55 lethality out of the box. Kind of. Again, it's not exactly true, because the lower you bring your opponent's armor, the more each point of lethality is worth, and that's not really true here. But in most cases, like against normal targets, that's the rough conversion. Like lethality is roughly a 0.5% damage amp per point. That is roughly true. I will say to do one more thing to be clear, if you have exactly as much armor pen as they have armor at level 18, lethality is 1% damage amp per point. But in general, you never get all the way there. So the math works out to being 0.5% of damage amp. But if you have 70 armor pen and they have 70 armor, it is 70% bonus damage, full stop. That is literally the math. This is, of course, slightly better against tanks than, like the lethality conversion, I guess, in that regard. But obviously, this is the I want to kill a squishy, right? I get this active off once per fight, but we're gonna really try to PogChamp this and knock some people down. So yeah. Playing Malphite bot lane now comes from Twitch chat. Yeah, I see your point. So yeah, I mean, this thing is absurd damage amps. If you don't have stopwatch, you are probably dead to this, because I mean, this like think about it on Talon, right? Talon wants to get melee Q. He wants to get the crit on the Q for having the melee version. Prowler's Claw lets him get melee Q. This is a pretty big deal. I don't expect a lot of poaching from other people. Actually, I could. Like, imagine Darius with this item. Like, imagine Darius Prowler's Claw. He's like, over there, let's go. I don't know the exact range. Like, I don't know if it's like 600 or if it's like 325. But, I mean, you can turn fighters into assassins with Prowler's Claw. Like, fighters have access to Blink. Right? Marksmen have it with their thing. There's a Mage Mythic that has, it's Proto Belt. Like, Proto Belt still exists. Tanks have Righteous Glory, which I know is not really the same, or Chem Tank, Turbo Tank, whatever. But, like, now fighters and assassins have access to a Blink in inventory. This is pretty huge. This is pretty huge as far as I'm concerned. All right. So let's go into, I'm going to be surprised by that every time for some reason. Let's go into how gold efficient they are. All right. Well, here's the funny thing, okay? So I am sticking by my old value of lethality. So if you actually look at Serrated Dirk on the live game League of Legends, it is 30 attack damage and 10 lethality for 1,000 gold. 30 attack damage is like 930 gold. So you're paying 70 gold for 10 lethality. Lethality is not a 7 gold per point stat. That is BS. Riot buffed the crap out of Serrated Dirk a few patches ago when they got rid of the on-hit damage, which is, I think, totally reasonable choice. And Serrated Dirk is indeed overpowered. So I am not using current live Serrated Dirk to check my lethality damage. And I basically chose, I forget the exact number, I think it's like 26 or something per point. I mean, we can actually just literally just do this. Yeah, it's 22.5 per point. That's what my lethality conversion is. And that's about right. Because, right, every point of lethality is about 0.5% of damage amp, which means it costs about 45 gold for 1% more damage. That roughly lines up, right? 45 gold for 1% more physical damage is about fair when you look at what it costs for ability power to make your abilities do more damage, or for attack damage to make your attack abilities do more damage. That lines up pretty well. And look, I want to be really clear. I'm just picking that number because it made sense to me. Like, 22.5 is just the number. There's no longer any direct evidence in the game that that should be the number anymore, which makes gold values and gold efficiency still a crapshoot. Right? It's still not great. But this is the number that I'm choosing, and I think it's roughly correct. We're within an order of magnitude, and so we're sticking with it because I'm not choosing 7. And so here's the attack damage, here's ability haste, ability haste, by the way, also oddly derived. We'll do that a bit later as well. Once we're done with the mythics, I think we'll go into it. But yeah, okay, you are kind of taking a 15% haircut for Night Stalker to do 100 plus 30% damage on your first attack. I mean, so hey, how much damage does your full kit deal? Right? Does your full burst do 1500 damage? Well, this is a 7% damage amp. What's 7% damage amp cost? Kind of 14 lethality, so like 300 gold. You can kind of call Night Stalker 14 lethality, I guess. Okay, so it's sort of worth 300 gold. Like, these are really hard to quantify, right? And it's like, it's realistically like not a reasonable thing to do. Ability haste, again, I think it's 100 per 5 points, which is, pretty cheap. Ability haste is actually a very cheap stat. And I've done some like further like derivative math, and ability haste is in fact very cheap overall. Just this is what the game tells us from the items we have. We'll talk about that later on down the line. But yep, you're getting about 2,700 gold worth of stats for every one of your mythics. Ability haste is basically cooldown reduction. It works a bit differently, but it's close to 1-to-1. We'll talk about the rest of it later on down the line. We will dive into that later on with the mythics. But yeah, these items are all about 85% gold efficient, 5 lethality, right? Like we're getting 100-ish gold per, thing. Percent armor pen is also kind of a weird one because we're kind of just spitballing and picking a number. Yeah, I don't tell you. These are interesting, right? We talk about the items. The actual gold efficiency is not the most important part. So now we go into the mage items, and there are 3 mana mage items and 3 non-mana mage items. So first up is Liandry's Anguish. 3,400 gold. Mana mage items are expensive, just like marksman items are. I'm not sure why. I don't absolutely love that this is the case, but it's where we are. Whatever. Every single one of these items builds out of Lost Chapter. Lost Chapter only builds into mage mythics, and that is it. All 3 of them. And they either build out of Fiendish Codex or Blasting Wand, and they all cost 3,400 gold. They give about 80 ability power, they give about 600 mana, and they give about 20 ability haste. Torment, Liandry's Anguish. Dealing damage with abilities causes enemies to burn for 15 plus an AP ratio. And this is, by the way, double checking, 300? I think it's 300 AP to double, right? I'm just double checking for a second. 306. No, this is way more than that. My brain is not working right now. 300 divided by 0.025. You know what? We're just going to, who cares? Let's just move on because my brain is not working. We've been on for an hour and a half. Let's just move on. Okay. 1% max health damage, though, per second for 4 seconds. And you gain 5% magic pen per second against burning targets. It is 300. Okay, we were right. Sure. Or is it whatever? 600. Yeah. So old Liandry's, by the way, was 1.5% when not slowed, and then 2.5% when they were slowed. So this is very clearly, let's just move on now because we're just done with this. Actually, no, it's 300 times 0.025. Does that equal 15? And it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. It's like 60 or something because if you multiply, it's 60 or 600. It's one of those two. 60 or 600. It's one of those two. I think it's 600. Let's move on though because we're getting really, really off topic. All right. So 1% max health burn, but to be fair, keep in mind, it's 600. Okay, we got there. Don't disclude the 15. Okay, don't disclude the 15 because a tank is going to have, so to be fair, like when you buy this item, people have like 1,500 max health or less. So this is already about 1% max health damage outright, right? This is when you buy it, it's 1% max health damage. As you build more ability power, of course, this damage goes up a little bit. I mean, a full build probably going to have about 600 AP, so it's now 30 flat damage. But like a late game tank has like 3,000 to 4,000 health. And okay, this isn't quite 1% max health anymore at 600 AP against a 4,000 health tank, a big Cho'Gath, but like it's still in the realm of 1% max health in most cases. So this item is roughly, at all points in the game, roughly 2% max health burn. That is roughly the math here, right? It is going to be roughly 30 damage per second. That scales up over time. It's roughly 2% max health damage at all points in time. So it's actually pretty close to in between non-slowed and slowed Leandries from previous patch. That's pretty good. On top of it, you get 5% magic pen per second. So as they're burning, you get 25% magic pen against them. That is absurdly good. That is very, 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 very strong. The magic pen, of course, feeds into the percent health damage. This is quite good. One thing that's a little bit weird, but I think it still lines up. It's just a little bit weird. Is ability haste is the stat here. This item gives you up to 40 ability haste, which is 30-ish CDR. And so what comes out of this is, okay, it is, I want to take longer fights. I want to keep casting so I can burn down the effective targets, right? After 5 full seconds, I get 25% magic pen. So I want my second round of spells to come back up with my up to 40 ability haste so I can keep doing it. The only small anti-synergy, and I think it's okay because it still lines up with the kind of the game style, is ability haste is not directly synergized with the first half of Torment, because hitting them at all, as long as you can hit within every 4 seconds, you don't need more ability haste. Cassiopeia does not super duper need ability haste. It does help the E, but it doesn't really help the Q. It's probably still the item. It's not a bad item. I still like this overall. This is very clearly the anti-tank option, right? It's percent health burn. It's ability haste, so you can keep casting during the fight. It's percent magic pen. Very, very, I think, tightly built. Good item. Luden's Tempest. So we get old Luden's Echo, but a bit different. Again, 80 AP, 600 mana, 10 haste instead of 20 haste because it doesn't build for Fiendish Codex. Is Lost Chapter Blasting Wand. So instead of 10 haste, we get 10 flat magic pen. And instead of 5 flat haste per mythic, we get 5 flat magic pen. So Riot is kind of, outside of the actives, basically saying that flat pen and haste cost the exact same amount of gold because they're comfortable with those numbers being out in the world. That's not really true, but yeah. Also, thank you, Pinoy, for the host. I saw it in the stream view. Welcome, everyone, from the Pinoy crew. Best player on G2 by far. And welcome, everybody. So, here's what the item actually gives you, okay? It's the exact same 100 plus 15% magic damage. I think it was 10% AP before, but still close enough to the target and 3 nearby enemies. I think that's still the same as well. And you get 30% move speed for 2 seconds when doing so. So there is a very small amount of, I think, very, very small amount of disjointing. Kind of the same how, like, ability haste doesn't exactly line up with the first half of Torment, but it's still pretty solid. Move speed doesn't exactly line up with the burst damage scenario. But it's probably like, I landed my spell, now I can catch up to you to land the second spell. So, like, it still does kind of line up, right? It's still actually pretty decent. 15% AP ratio means it's going to cost, like, 666.6666 AP to double the damage. That's actually pretty close to where Leandries was, although this never gets doubled, so the AP ratio is actually even worse here. This is actually the most aggressive AP ratio of all the mythics so far for mages. But regardless, here's where we are, right? We get some burst damage, and we get flat pen. We get up to 30 flat pen. 30 flat pen is very, very good. This is more flat pen than you can get in the old version of the game. And to be fair, right, Ludens plus finish a legendary, that is not that much slower than Ludens plus Old Oblivion Orb. And, I mean, Ludens itself, of course, exists at 10. So, I mean, very clearly, right, here's flat damage up front, you know, and a little bit of get in and get out. Like, this is not, I would not call this anti-synergy. Like, I don't want to come across, like, nearly as harsh as I might have sounded. This still does fit with the playstyle. Here's AP, here's flat pen, here's some upfront burst damage, go one-shot someone. This is probably literally always a LeBlanc item. She probably never changes. But that's okay. Like, that's fine. Looks pretty cool overall. And then we get Everfrost. Everfrost, I would say, is the most new item here. We're back to Lost Chapter plus Blasting Wand. It is, once again, 80 ability power, 600 mana, 10 ability haste. They have all chosen a random stat to add. So I will say that Magic Pen makes sense as the addition on Luden's Tempest. And, I mean, the ability haste, to be fair, literally comes out of Lost Chapter and Fiendish Codex. So I really can't hate here as well. Out of nowhere, Everfrost gives you 200 health. I really wouldn't have minded seeing Ruby Crystal in this build just to, like, sell it to me. I kind of think they should have. I really do feel that way. They probably should have. But it's exactly the same AP, exactly the same mana, and, I mean, they all have the same 10 baseline haste. again, I love, right, in the same cost, right? They all have as many stats similar as is reasonably possible, and I like that. I like that. So Everfrost tells you it's the slightly scrappier item, right? It's a slightly scrappier item. It's, hey, by the way, it's got health on top of it, and, you know, we've got a medium range cone root so that you can, like, get on top of them and be more of a crowd control champion. The health binding lets you think, you know, maybe I actually buy this on a Mumu after all. You know, we're gonna bandage into ult, into Everfrost root, or even just throw out the slow so that I can get the bandage on top. Like, it slightly says, hey, what about Malphite? Like, what about Nautilus? Like, what, you know, maybe those, like, sometimes they go AP tanks. Like, it just slightly leans into it, right? Here's more crowd control. Deal magic damage in a cone. By the way, the AP ratio is more aggressive than Luden's for, I don't know why, but it is. Doesn't seem to be blocked by minions, which is nice, so it's, like, way more usable. 65% slow for 1.5 is quite good. Enemies at center are rooted instead. The cooldown's short, too, right? This is a short cooldown. This is definitely usable twice in a team fight. Absolutely usable twice in a team fight. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Every single minion wave, as we're seeing in chat. Yeah. Every single minion wave. Now, it's not absurd wave clear, but it adds, right? It does help. This is a very meaningful item. This is very, very meaningful. Wow. I mean, this item should absolutely turn some heads. Now, I think the other mage mythics are very good. Like, this is very, very good. This is very, very good. This is very, very good. I saw a Reddit thread earlier, like this morning or last night, that was like, Assassins got OP items and all the AP mages got was their items shuffled through. I was like, no, you're freaking trolling. These items look so nice. Like, yeah, you can, like, think about, but I turned invisible with Duskblade. It's like, this roots you every minion wave. This is so good. This is so good. This item is very strong. I don't know. Like, this looks really, really incredible. Yeah, it's just like, oh, are you Talia? You can just fish for the root. If it lands, get thrown into my rocks. Like this is enough time to for sure set up your stuff. There's some real power here. There's some real power here. And so legendaries get plus ability power. And what's funny, and this is why I keep saying, hey, what about those like quasi AP tanks? Because the more AP you have, kind of, the less it matters. Basically, consider an 800 ability power mage, like someone who's like totally full build. We'll discount Deathcap for now because it changes the math, okay? You're a late game 600, 800 AP mage, okay? 15 AP still adds, we'll call it 10 damage to your Q, okay? But your Q already does 900 damage, so why do you need 10 more damage in your Q? But 5 Magic Pen gives your Q 2% more damage. Or 3% more damage, or whatever, right? The more damage you have through AP and ranks and base damages and other sources, the more you want multipliers, like Flat Pen and Percent Pen. The less base damage you have, the more you need 15 ability power to ramp your damage. So Everfrost, in this place as well, tells you, if this is the only AP item you buy, that's cool. Because this is going to give you 60 ability power out of the Mythic, with 80 ability power here. It can be your only AP item, and you're good to go. That lines up with how League of Legends works. So you really want to consider Everfrost on non-mages. I don't know about Darius building Everfrost. He has, I think, 0 AP ratios. I would rather go for the wind bow, but maybe. Yeah. So yeah, so that's really cool, right? So this is the only AP item you buy on a tank sometimes. It's still not bad on someone like Lux or Karthus, right? Just some extra crowd control to land your skill shots. It's set up for your abilities, still super on board. And so we'll stop and go to the item efficiency. Shield your eyes. Leandri's Anguish, Luden's Tempest, and Everfrost, okay? And these things are, interestingly, right, because the 200 health, it really skews the numbers here. And because Ability Haste and Pen are fairly cheap stats. And by the way, hey, look, right? 10 haste and 10 pen, through my calculations, are in the same order of magnitude of cost. This is about correct. But okay, again, we're still, 90-ish% gold efficient. Okay, yeah, Everfrost is more so. I've seen some people say you shouldn't consider health. That's troll as hell. You should definitely consider health. It is a very good stat, especially early game. 200 health is a really big deal when it's your first item. Everfrost may well just be the best mage mythic. It does have, even though the gold doesn't say so, I want to be clear, the gold value doesn't say so, but the mythic passive, AP is an overpriced stat. A little bit. I don't really want to say that it's overpriced, but for a mage, you're really hunting more for ability haste and magic pen than you are for ability power. Like, the gold value says one thing, the actual game impact of these mythics is better. This is, again, why every time I'm going to say it, gold efficiency is not the best way to measure items, but it's the easiest way to measure items. So we're going to do that anyway. Luden's Echo, right, does 100 damage. Torment does 15 plus 5 to 25%. 15 plus 1% plus 5 to 25% magic pen. This is, by the way, just measuring what 5% magic pen costs, which is 161. Which, is basically saying, look, if you have, this is the weird thing, right? Let's just compare these numbers right here, right? So, okay, let's say we're at 2 stacks and we're at 10% magic pen, which means this is 320 gold worth of magic pen, which is what 10 flat pen does. It's about 320 gold worth of magic pen. So, right, Torment is as gold efficient on the magic pen at 2 stacks, but when you're killing an Ahri who has 52 MR, you need 25% magic pen to be as good as 10 flat, right? So again, just kind of going in the line of gold efficiency is not the end all be all of what's actually optimal. Just, again, to push that one forward. But yeah, these items, again, you're paying some money for these actives, which makes absolute total sense. Absolute total sense here. So now we'll go into the non-mana mage mythics. All right, slightly cheaper, right? They are on the assassin tier, right? They're 3,200, right? Tanks, AD assassins, and non-mana mages are all 3,200, and then mana mages and the marksmen are all 3,400. Okay, we have Hextech Alternator. This is the rebuilt Hextech Revolver, right? 2 books make a gun. Now it's 2 books make an alternator. And this applies on all sources of damage. So attacks and abilities will trigger Alternator's damage on hit. It's functionally the same item otherwise, or at least pretty close to it. I do want to point out, by the way, that Alternator is totally exactly how Luden's Echo as an item works, by the way. This really could use Alternator because it's literally what Echo does. So I don't know. I mean, I get that they kind of want Alternator to be in different spots, but if there was an item to include, it would kind of be this one. I'm just saying. Alternator is actually the precursor to Luden's Echo's passive, but whatever. Let's move on. 300 gold, Hextech Alternator, Ruby Crystal, Blasting Wand, and 900 gold. AP, Health, Haste. Bam, that's it, right? Vladimir? Of course. Echo? Maybe if you don't need the mana. Sure. Let's go. AP, Health, Haste. We're in there. Maybe Zach wants to buy this, maybe not, but hey, AP Health Haste, okay, sure. And we get Dash in a Direction, Unleashing Missiles that do 2 to 300 damage. Again, level 1 to 18, I'm not a fan of. 50% ability power ratio means it's 200? No. 2,000, right? Am I trolling here? 2,000 AP, double supersonic? Well, this is clearly the worst AP ratio of all time. It's a cosmetic AP ratio. And I don't think Riot needs to have all items scale the same, but it's but why though? That's all. It's just a little bit of a but why though. Sure, there's multiple missiles, but it's still 2,000 AP to double the damage when this was, 666. I'm just saying, right? This is actually 333 to double the damage. I don't care if there's multiple missiles. It still costs as much AP to double the damage. The ratio is hot garbage. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's just funny to me that some ratios are playable and some are just not worth thinking about ever in your life. Moving on though, deals some magic damage, then gains 75% movement speed towards enemy chance for 2 seconds. So there's another hey maybe Amumu buys this, right? There is a totally reasonable AP tank poaching here. Amumu Proto Belt's in, runs at you, and it's I could go Sunfire with Chemtech Turbo Tank, But I could just go Proto Belt instead. Let's go. Now, yes, it is a more expensive Proto Belt, but to be fair, it's got more stats on it. It's got more haste on it. It's got more damage on it. And it's got move speed afterwards. And it's got flat pen. Now, I really would have kind of liked to see this a lot live in the same place as Luden's, where it had the 10 flat pen on top, because now we're basically saying that mana mages have access to more pen than non-mana mages. Like, I kind of would have liked some level of similarity here. It's not the worst thing ever. But it just feels a little weird. It's not a huge problem. It's not a huge problem. Yeah, this is solid on Singe to make sure you get your fling. Mordekaiser wants to get in to make sure he's got like ult range and stuff. Like, this is okay. Non-mana mages that want to kill backline. I mean, it's the obvious Amumu item for sure, right? And this is honestly not even that bad on Zac. Like, this is a totally decent Zac option. Eventually it gives 20 magic pen. Not at the beginning, but eventually down the line it does. Next we get Riftmaker, which is the Leeching Leer. This I think literally only builds in a Riftmaker, but Leeching Leer is, you shouldn't consider it old Catalyst. On PvE it had the same icon. It's not Catalyst. Catalyst is gone, by the way. It is AP health plus more AP. This is the Omni Vamp item, by the way, right? This is Vamp Scepter for mages, by the way. Leeching Leer is Vamp Scepter for mages. It's AP health plus more AP, and we get ability power, health. We're always getting ability haste in the upgrade, right? This had 15 as well. Here's 15 ability haste, and here's 15 Omni Vamp. So we are losing some health. We are gaining Omni Vamp, which is kind of interesting because health and Omni Vamp are kind of the same stat. It's give me more durability. So there's a little bit of overlap here. I would almost prefer lower AP, the same to the HP. Like, I don't know if that's really ideal because every Mage Mythic has 80 ability power, and that's nice. I really, really like that. And I probably like that more in, like, the weird, like, not quite OCD than it having the same health as Proto Belt, or Rocket Belt, I guess, technically. But we get Void Corruption, all right? We're going to live in combat for a long time. For each second in combat, deal 3% bonus damage capped at 15%, which is fairly similar to like 25 flat and percent pen. That's like roughly where it lives. At maximum strength, though, that bonus is now dealt as true damage. So the 15% bonus damage now ignores MR entirely. And yeah, I could like do a big thing about the math and what that actually means for a damage amp, but suffice it to say, if they have 100 MR, this 50% bonus damage becomes 30% bonus damage. There you go. For every 100 MR your opponent has, this doubles. That's the math, okay? Done. You got there? Great. Easy. If they have 200 MR, it's 45% bonus damage. Now, I want to point out, right, that you deal whatever your damage is, and then if they have 200 MR, you can do 3, 6, 9, 12, 45% bonus damage. Now, is 45% bonus damage a very good passive? Yes, it is. 45% bonus damage is like the best passive in League of Legends. That is absurd. You don't get that anywhere else. Even Death Cap doesn't really quite get you 45% more damage. But that's strong, right? After 5 seconds against ultra MR tanks. I mean, we're talking like they have Chemtech, they have Spirit Visage, they have Force of Nature, they've got Merc Treads. Like 200 MR takes a lot of effort. Tanks natively go to 50. So you have to buy 150 more MR. That is 3 full items. If they are hard focusing and going anti-mage, then yeah, this can eventually get you 45% bonus damage later on in the fight as you continue fighting them down the line. This, of course, gives you 5% magic pen per item as well, so you also get 20% magic pen. Void Staff, I believe, is 40 or 45%, so this is 65% magic pen. They might scale multiplicatively. I am not sure. I'm not sure about that. Either way, yeah, this is a very good anti-tank live in the fight for a long time. Live in the fight a long time and burn down a tank. Cool. And then we get Night Harvester. Hextech Alternator again, so we're back in the Alternator from our Rocket Belt. Again, one that Ludens should probably have. Alternator, another ruby crystal on top, and a blasting wand. And we get, again, 80 AP, 15 ability haste, 250 health. So it's the exact same stat profile as Rocket Belt, right? Exact same profile as Rocket Belt, 80, 250, 15. 80, 250, 15. Same cost. So literally the only difference between this and Rocket Belt is this text down here. Okay? Straight up this text down here. Now I want to point out Rocket Belt gives you 5 Magic Pen. 5 Magic Pen? Like, let's compare, right? Let's look at these items before. 15 AP fought with 5 Magic Pen earlier. Down here on Night Harvester, 5 AP is fighting with 5 Magic Pen. This is a garbage mythic passive. This is a trash mythic passive. I do not enjoy that this is the number. Now, it's possible that there are bad transcriptions in the patch notes, but this is immediately a bad mythic passive. Now, that's okay. The item might still be good, but it has to be because of this. Okay, so here we go. Damaging a champion. Deals 175 to 250 bonus magic damage and grants you 25% movement speed for 1.5 seconds, 6-second cooldown per enemy. So, this is Ludens Tempest with the same cooldown, right? Because Ludens was... it's a very short cooldown. It's 10-second cooldown, but it's 100 damage and 30 move speed for 2 seconds. This is more damage. And again, skills level 1. I don't like that. But it's more damage. 60 per enemy means it's like 12 seconds, kind of. Oh, I'm trolling. It's 5 ability haste, not ability power. I'm a dum-dum. It's ability haste, not AP. Totally reasonable now. This is we're on board. I was trolling. We're back. Okay, 5 ability haste. That's actually the stat. Reasonable mythic passive. Keck W. I'm done. Let's move on. Okay, this is interesting because it is objectively way more damage, right? This is, in most cases, double the damage. I really would have liked to see a level 10 scaling here because you might just buy it and it's actually 200 or 215 when you complete this mythic, right? So it could be literally twice as good as Ludens. Just outright, instantly twice as good as Ludens. But damaging enemy champion deals 175, probably more like 200 something, and grants you 25% move speed for 1.5 seconds. I don't know if this move speed stacks. It might, but this is like, are you playing Fiddlesticks? Like, are you playing any, like, a reasonable AoE champion? I mean, Karthus, right? Literally, Soul Rend just triggers 5 times on Karthus. Like, yeah, Karthus really wants mana. Kennen, of course, doesn't. But, like, Lilia is going to hit enemy champions pretty often, sure. You kind of want the Vamp. Yeah, sure, I get it. But, like, man. This is guaranteed damage when you damage any champion in any team fight. This is guaranteed upfront damage. This is Electrocute levels damage. This is Dark Harvest levels damage instantly. Like, the absolute reliability is a very big deal. Darius out here. Okay, I love the Darius buys everything meme. Because, you know, he gets some move speed for dealing damage. He gets ability haste. You're only buying 80 ability power. Darius could totally buy Night Harvester. It's even got his axe on it. I mean, it's clearly a Darius item. Yeah, if you are reliably hitting lots of champions, it's a pretty big deal. I've kind of overwhelmed by all the other items, like, looking more exciting. And really, I want to say that, you know, if you're trying to kill exactly one champion, you know, Ludens or Protobelt, Rocket Belt, maybe it is a bit more for you. But if you are a team fighter, this thing is absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Again, I really think this is the best Karthus item. I know he really, really, really wants Flat Magic Pen. I know that. But I'm pretty sure the Flat Pen never beats this. Until, like, ultra late game. But getting 200 bonus damage on your ultimate is, like, Karthus is going to gain 4% win rate this patch. I'm not even trolling. I'm pretty sure he just does. I think Karthus should just be in every game. That's my bet right now. Is Karthus just is a 55% win rate champion this patch. Gain elo now. All right, so every single time we look at efficiencies of these items, okay? So Hextech, we are, again, in kind of the same boat, right? We are about 85% gold efficient on the easy to look at stats for these items. Ability haste is maybe slightly undercosted, but I'm not sure it really is. It's But yeah, we get a bunch of upfront damage. We get about 100, 150 gold per mythic passive. That's still roughly true for most items. 5 to 15% with some true conversion. Soul Rend does a bunch of upfront damage. Supersonic does a bunch of upfront damage. Protobelt theoretically does out damage Soul Rend, to be clear, which is why I'm like, look, if the reason you're hitting the enemy team is because you're getting in there with something like Proto Belt, and plus it gives you flat magic pen, like if you're Kennen or Vladimir, I think you still want Rocket Belt. Because the usability of running hella fast, the usability of getting the upfront damage, and it's more upfront damage, the usability of flat magic pen to kill them faster. If you are bursting them in the team fight and you're there, and you just want to kill like those 2 or 3 people off, I think Rocket Belt is better. But if you're just like, we're just gonna generically like hit a bunch of people, I'm feeling Night Harvester. Again, Karthus is my pick. All right, let's move on to the next one though. We are going into tank items, or not tank items, sorry, fighter items. And fighters have 4. They have 4 like tailor-made mythics, and of course there was the assassin one that like gave you the shield and stuff. That's probably also poachable as well. But Trinity Force is 3,333 gold. I dig that. It is slightly more gold than the other ones because they're 3,300. But I think the flavor of the combined being more expensive is worth it, even though technically Trinity Force will come online to CS later. All right, we get Sheen, we get Hearthbound Axe, and we get Kindle Gem. Hearthbound Axe is basically move speed on damage. It's like Old Phage. Sheen no longer has... I don't believe it has ability haste. It doesn't, actually. It doesn't have mana or ability haste. It is just a component now. And it's 700 gold, which means you can't start the game with it. And you're paying a lot of money for that passive. But they have finally unbound Sheen. Old Sheen used to give ability power. Present day Sheen still gives mana. Future Sheen is finally just Sheen by itself. It took Riot 10 years to get there, but they finally got there. Sheen is now finally champion agnostic. Big ups. Good job, Riot. I love it. Sheen being opened up to more champions, because now Shen can buy Sheen and Trinity Force to deal tons of damage. Tryndamere might not do it, but I'm just saying it finally opened up. No, Sheen used to give AP. Don't correct me, Twitch chat. I was right. He said the thing. Exactly. Okay. So health, attack damage, attack speed, haste. It's kind of a mix of a lot of things, right? We're doing a lot of things here, all right? Obviously, we're a fighter, so we want AD and health. AD and health is like the ultimate fighter stat binding. Attack speed, haste is no matter if I'm... it was 25 AP, yeah. I'm pretty sure it's 25. It's like, okay, no matter what kind of fighter you are, you're going to do things more often. It's like, okay, well, how good is that? Well, okay, we get a bunch of passives. We get Spellblade, of course, and it's the old Trinity Force. It's 200% base attack damage. Cool, we're still on board there. 1.5 cooldown, still the same. Great. Threefold Strike. Basic attacks grant 25 move speed for 3 seconds. That's what Hearthbound Axe does. Now it's a sword, an axe, and a gem becomes 3 swords. Or whatever these are. I don't know. 3 shurikens? Who cares? All right, move speed for 3 seconds. Okay, sure. Old Phage passive. If it's a champion, increase your base AD by 6% up to 30%. Wow. So now if we're doing a long duration fight, I'm doing 2.6 times my base attack damage per Sheen proc down the line. Ability helps me get my next Sheen proc down the line. Attack speed helps me get this stack going faster. My base AD increases by up to 30%. Woo! Yeah, Aurelia, Darius item, let's go. Cool beans, right? This is, now what I want to point out though, is there is absolutely no quality of life for getting into the fight. There's no move speed, there's no blink, there's no reaching your opponent more easily. You've got to walk up to these guys, but if you don't need any further help, and by the way, here's your legendary with 10% attack speed on it, which is very good. If you don't need any further help, you are beating things down. This is the epitome of deal the most damage from a fighter item. If you just need to brawl someone, I don't think you can beat Trinity Force. That is the placement of this item. This item can give you, by the way, 75% attack speed. 75% attack speed. You can basic attack a minion for 25 move speed, sure. But you're not getting the bonus AD. Just saying. It's like, yeah. It, can be a little tough. That's all I'm saying. I'm pretty sure old Sheen gave move speed, right? Even though Zeal went away, it kept the move speed on it. No, because your base AD is 1.3, and that is double to 2.6, right? Your base AD is 1.3, double to 2.6. Yeah, I think even current Triforce still has it, right? The percent move speed? Yeah. So, of course, can you poach this as a ranged champion? Absolutely. I want to point things out, though. The base AD on ranged champions tend to be a little bit lower. Jin would hate this because his base AD is only slightly high. And in general, his attack speed's too low. So, like, it just takes way too long to do this. But, you know, the idea of 70% attack speed. This basically ties Kraken Slayer for attack speed, right? Now, Vayne will not actually do this because she really wants new Rage Blade and she wants crit for that. We'll stay tuned for that later on down the line. But there is a chance we see Marksman poach this. We'll see. But 70% attack speed, 75% attack speed, theoretically, in an endgame build is a ton of attack speed. Still feels pretty good. Ezreal should prog it with the Q. Yes, that should still work with his Q. Ezreal may indeed go Trinity Force. It's not bad here. But there are Sheen items with crit, and we'll get to those down the line. Next up, we go Gore Drinker. So Gore Drinker is the Survive Burst fighter item. 3300. We get Iron Spike Whip. We get New Phage and Kindle Gem. 400 health compared to 200. We get 45 AD compared to 35. We get no attack speed at all. We get 20 ability haste compared with 10. And we get 150% health regen compared to not at all. Right? So Gore Drinker we're not attack speed based, but we're going to cast spells with our AD, and they're going to be more durable. Okay, yeah, makes sense to me. Sure, you're going to be more durable. Okay. Thirsting / active. Deal 1.1x your total attack damage to nearby enemies. So it's team at active, right? Better team at active, but team at active. Restore health equal 20% of your total attack damage plus 20% missing health per champion hit. 15-second cooldown, affected by ability haste. So immediately this is actually a 12-ish second cooldown. Darius item. And by the way, here's more ability haste. So this item could give you 40 ability haste, which is 30-ish CDR, roughly the math here. Gain 1% attack damage for each 5% missing health. Caps at 75% missing health. So, wow. So if I have like 200 AD and I'm at 1/4 health, I actually have 230 AD, which means I heal for 46 health per champion hit. 12% missing per champion hit. And this is like a 245 attack, 245 damage active. Wow. Like, this seems solid. And I want to point out, by the way, like, this is a fairly low cooldown, right? This, like, if I can get this first item and I'm getting it around like level 9 or something, and I have like 130 attack damage, I'm getting, 25-ish plus 12% missing health just against my lane opponent. I'm just going to like go scrap and then hit it and then, okay, we're good, right? Like, this is such a big deal. Again, a bunch of ability haste, a bunch of AD when you're low. This is a massive let's heal. If you can cluster people together somehow, like, I don't think Diana ever buys this, but like if you're with a Diana somehow, Yone could do this. Yone probably doesn't build this item, to be clear, but like maybe. People group up, you get jumped on, and bam. Okay, so reading up does an additional 200%. Yeah, so your basic attack still does 1.3, sure. The Sheen proc was doing 2.6. The Sheen is worth 2.6. Your base AD is already your base AD. It always deals damage. Ori combos in. Renekton hits the button. Like, sure. Set E. Set E is a good one, right? Set E pulls them together. Bam, we hit this button. Set's actually a great option for this. Gnar is a great option for this. Yeah. Anyone who can group together, you're going to be like, oh, this is a lot of damage, and you're going to heal your health practically to full. Like, almost no matter what you're missing, depending on the ordering, and hopefully this is actually coming in first, you basically heal to full if it's the entire enemy team. No matter what your health bar is, if it's the entire enemy team, you are full health from any number at all. Now, you're not likely getting a 5x on this, but possible. Now, I want to say ability haste is really bad on Yasuo. It's pretty bad on Yone. It's okay-ish on Yone, but pretty sick item. Stride Breaker. It's the engage option. We have an engage option for fighters. So Darius, because he needs to engage. Like, this guy runs Ghost Flash because he needs to get in there so often. There is no escaping a fighter wearing Shield Stride Breaker. 3,300 is the fighter item cost. Again, it's in the middle. Iron Spike Whip. Hearthbound Axe, Kindle Gem. Iron Spike Whips, by the way, is the Tiamat active item. Hearthbound Axe is the old Phage passive move speed on attack item. And it has attack speed on it, by the way. So we get health, we get attack damage, we get attack speed, we get ability haste. Now I want to compare these stats to Trinity Force real quick. 350, 20, 10. 350, 20, 10. Okay, more health, more AD, less attack speed, same haste. Okay, sure. So we are, Triforce is very clearly the I'm going to auto-attack you. I'm Aurelia, I'm Jax, I'm buying Wit's End, the item. I get that. This is less that, right? They're less binding to that, but we're still some attack speed here. Sure. We get move speed on the Mythic passive, so up to 12%. That's a lot. We will talk about old Phage or new Phage down the line. So, Halting Slash, active, right? So again, still the Tiamat active, but it's a lunge. It's a lunge for it, probably pretty short, but it's lunge for 1.1x, slowing them. And it's a short cooldown, and again, affected by ability haste, right? So they're really trying to stat bind, they're trying to item bind. Tiamat active, right? The Iron Spike Whip, they're trying to bind it onto fighters and say, hey, by the way, ability haste is a great fighter stat. Because your sustain is through this, your damage is through this, you're going to be an ability haste user, you're target agnostic. Like, I love that they're trying to take fighters and say, no. You're not flat pen or percent pen, you're ability haste. You're not going to scale either way. You're just going to hit more buttons. I actually like that a lot. Right? Because it's so easy to be like, oh, pen, whatever, screw it. It's like, no. You're just going to do more. You're just constantly a threat. I like that. Like, uptime is like kind of the name of fighters here. And it's like, yeah, your lunge is going to be on ability haste as well. Right now, unfortunately, yeah, sure, this one is the big ability haste one, a shorter cooldown, plus the item gives up to 40. This only gives up to 10, but you can get more ability haste down the line with other items, sure, whatever. Either way, you're getting move speed on the passive. Dealing physical damage gives 30 movement speed. This means you don't have to auto attack. It doesn't have to be on minions or champions. You just get 30 move speed. Old Phage. And you have a lunge forward with a slow. This is certainly pretty nice. Now, it's really, I think, quite likely that something like Darius Apprehend has a longer range than this. So your lunge won't land the slow. You will just lunge to get into Apprehend range, and that's just the play. Or you find other ways to make it happen. So it's not exactly perfect here. But yeah, you can see an Udyr lunge. You can see, this is like all the old juggernauts. Like Dr. Mundo could kind of use this, right? Kind of. I'm just saying, Mundo kind of goes full tank, but like, that's kind of the world we live in. Volibear, Illaoi, Garen, like, thank you, chat. Like, those are good options. Stridebaker Bear Slap, indeed, instead of Flash Bear Slap. Thank you, Quickshot. Of course, Shakara's, thank you. But yeah, I think there's good places can live, right? It is additive CC to a fighter. You cannot, I think, understate how valuable that actually is. You are faster. You get 30 move speed for 2 seconds. You get 3% move speed per legendary. You have a dash in the kit somewhere. That's a big deal. It has a slow on top. Like, these things matter. This matters. Are there any non-mythic spell blades? Yes. We'll get to them when we get to non-mythics. Divine Sunderer, anti-tank. Your health, my health. Fighters can steal chunks of their opponent's health. So this is, all right, you know what, screw it. Maybe I'm Fiora or something, although there's no attack speed here for Fiora. She's not like super attack speed bound, but still, Camille, Fiora, these things that kind of want to kill tanks. Phage, Sheen, Kindle Gem. And what are we getting out of this, okay? Well, we get health, we get AD, we get haste. No attack speed. We are very, very spell focused. So we compare here. Health, AD, haste, and this had attack speed on it because of Iron Spike Whip, because it was the move speed item. So move speed, thus attack speed. Sure, I get that. This is, no. I'm getting no quality of life. I'm just going to be a tank killer, okay? No quality of life at all. We're just a tank killer. We get Spellblade. After using an ability, your next basic attack deals 10% max health physical damage. If they're a champion, heal for half of it. So let's think about this, okay? A late game fighter has about 130 base attack damage. So Triforce, not kind of the other stacking, sure, would do 260. There we go. Yep, there we go. 260 damage. It would do 260 damage in a super late game scenario. If we're buying it fairly early on in the game, and I've got like 90 attack damage, doing like 180 damage. So Triforce is doing pretty good damage with Spellblade. This is doing 10% max health. Well, tanks are going to be in the 1,500 to up to very top end 4,000. So in general, this is doing more damage per hit than Trinity Force against tanks. It caps at 300. Does it actually? That doesn't say it here, but maybe it actually caps. But even if it, whatever. Either way, like, yeah, maybe on PvE it says it caps. Who knows? Whatever, let's just take the tooltips as they are. After using an ability, your next basic attack is enhanced by 10% max health damage. Yeah, cool. Either way, it's fine. Restore for some of the damage dealt. So even if you are hitting like a 17 item Cho'Gath with a bunch of stacks, yeah, so the cap is to large epic monsters and minions. Okay, people are trolling me in chat. Let's move on. Champion is almost never capped. This absolutely does more damage per spellblade than Trinity Force. That is hard true. Now, I think if you're Jax or Aurelia, you are still not switching off Trinity Force because Trinity Force is still too good. I think you're going to try to find lifesteal in other places and just move on from there. But if you're like, look, like you could honestly buy this on like Malphite, kind of, and be like, look, on Malphite, I'm going to fight Orm with this. There's like almost a use here. It's let's do some damage and let's restore for 50% of that of the damage dealt. It's only 30% heal for ranged users. I still don't think Vayne or something goes for this, but like Vayne can obviously trigger Spellblade very easily. Regardless, this clearly does what it's supposed to do. It grants legendary items 5% armor Magic Pen, so you can get 20% armor in Magic Pen, which is pretty solid. 20% is a good number. Obviously, that's from item 2 through item 5. That takes a while. But yeah, it lets you drain tank. Like the big thing is you can get 5% of someone's max health back. Right? It's not a when you're low sustain. It's just, I'm going to keep getting your health. You basically can't lose to Malphite with this. Yes, your healing's going to be cut in half because of the Bramble Vest. Sure, that's going to suck a little bit. But you're going to chunk this guy down. You're going to get health back. This is theoretically, it could be like, I don't love this as a Shen option, really. I actually would almost prefer Triforce on him or the Sunfire upgrade. But, if you're more of a fighting style champion, you've got all these fighter options and, battling may work pretty well. Yep, it's a spell that works with Gangplank Q, so Gangplank can heal himself with Q spam. That's a possibility here as well. Certainly an option. This can certainly work out. I'm not super enthused about it, but I don't think it's a bad item. It's just, I think it's going to have a little bit of a hard time finding a space. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Might be really undervaluing the heal. All right, so what is the gold efficiency? Well, we're again at about 85% with Trinity Force. A lot of attack speed, feels pretty good. Obviously getting a bunch of bonus AD. This is what 25 move speed plus a flat 6 attack damage gives you in efficiency. The move speed is going to be on pretty constantly. The attack damage is going to be on when you're fighting champions, which is when it matters. Spellblade at 2x is obviously pretty good. Theoretically, like this is 1400, right? Because Sheen is 700 gold. Here's a double Spellblade. Okay, well, it's gold efficient. Right? Like, this is why it's so hard to use gold efficiency because, like, do you actually value Sheen this high? Maybe, right? Probably. But like, well, this item's absurdly efficient now. Like, it's just the best item of the game. 10% attack speed is pretty good as well, of course. So, solid stuff. We have Gore Drinker. Yep, it's a bunch of health regen. It's a bunch more health, which is a very good stat. It's a bunch more AD. It's a ton more ability haste, which is nice. And ultimately, look, actually, I'm going to screw this one up. Nope, I'm including all of them. Okay. Yeah, it's just there's so much more health in AD that this item is more efficient. And hey, by the way, we get Crescent. I might have Crescent here. I do have Crescent. Okay, so hey, that's a possibility. Oops, go away. Let's try again. There we go. We're doing it live, But of course, this is, I think, even more damage than the Iron Spike Whip, and it heals you. So like, there's way more going on here. It's not, it's more than 150. Like, Gore Drinker is absurdly efficient. Looks like an outstanding item. Then we go on to Stride Breaker, right? Stride Breaker, okay, still very close to gold efficiency. Like, Fighter's got some very efficient items. Very, very, very efficient items. Again, we can put our Crescent here. But of course, it also slows. That's a really big deal. We don't really need this, but hey, we can do it. 30 move speed is worth this much. 3% move speed is worth about this much. That's accurate. You're running really quick with this item. You have a dash, you have a slow, and it's already gold efficient. This is a very good item. Divine Sunderer. We also have this option here. I'm just gonna kind of say it here with the pull. 40 attack damage, 400 health. Yeah, less gold efficient to be fair, but hey, it is still, you know, honestly, Spellblade ×2, like it's roughly Trinity Force in value, right? So it's like, you know, the really OP Sheen upgrades. It's like, oh, well, Triforce isn't very gold efficient. Yeah, but double Spellblade. Oh, it is. Okay. Oh, these things are just really, really good on stats. Yeah, and then, hey, here's Divine Thunderer. Also, probably better than double Spellblade. Like, it's maybe even triple Spellblade, right? Like, this actually legitimately might be just triple Spellblade. It's like, oh, well, it's the best item in the game then. So, you know, it's the dankest. Now, are you going to get to use Armor and Magic Pen well yourself? Probably not, no. But, like, YOLO. And I will say, okay, you're probably never doing this on a Amphitank Mage. Like, I'm thinking of, I don't know, Echo or something, or Vladimir Gross. Like, yeah, you could look past 40 AD maybe and try to use the Spellblade, and then you can use the Magic Pen, but I don't really think this is going to get poached ever. Now, you think Sheen isn't really worth 700 gold? Yeah, maybe so. But, I mean, what do we have? So, like, we can you know, energize times 100 is 406 gold. Now I want to be really clear. Sheen happens way more than energize. And I want to be clear, like 80 carries buy Kirchheis Shard on purpose. A 100 damage energize costs 400 gold. And 80 carries buy Kirchheis Shard when they could buy other components like Cloak of Agility. So they are happy with Energize's price point. Sheen happens like 6 times as often as Energize. Just saying, right? Like what would 100 on hit damage cost you? 2,500? Is you're gonna like just stack recurve bows, which again, not realistic, right? But if you can Spellblade a third or a quarter as often as raw on hit damage, and hey, by the way, did you know that fighters love to buy Blade of the Ruin King and Wit's End and all these other on hit items? Like, clearly fighters consider on hit damage to be fairly costed for them. 100 on hit damage costs 2,500 gold. If you Sheen proc a third of your auto attacks, which seems totally reasonable, it's fairly costed. So, you know, Sheen, yeah, it's kind of 700 gold. That's where the math is. So I'm kind of on board here. These are very good items. These are very, very good items. Fighters got some really, really sick upfront item choices here. This is pretty pog. All right. So now we move on to the support. The support ones. Now, Riot tried pretty hard to remove AP from most of the support mythics so that Braum had more than Sunfire Cape as options. Now, there is one AP support mythic, but the rest of them is like, hey, does Janna feel good about this? Yeah, she still feels good about this, okay? So, support mythics cost 2,700, right? So they are 500 gold cheaper than the Sunfire tank mythics. All right, we have Kindle Gem, Fairy Charm, and Fairy Charm, by the way, no longer has shield and heal power. It's just cooldown reduction. Or the other way around. No, it's just ability haste, not shield and heal power. Unless I'm hard trolling, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. Let's move on, because I know it's written down somewhere down the line. Winged Moonplate, which is a new health move speed item, and 850. So it's health, ability haste, move speed, and yeah, of course, mana regen. Fairy Charm, Forbidden Idol is the heal and shield power one. Fairy Charm is just Fairy Charm. Sorry, my brain just did not work. Fairy Charm is just the base component. Oh, and by the way, Fairy Charm is now 250 for 50% and not 125 for 25%. So it's less poached by the people just buying it on a recall and pitting against a mana potion. I think that's fine. Health, haste, move speed, regen. Mana regen, as always, is a support-bound stat. Supports have very high mana regen values in general, which helps them feel good about these things, and it keeps them slightly away from other champions. Okay, so, yep, it's some generic durability and cast stuff more often. Ability haste is more or less cooldown reduction, the stat. And it grants you and nearby allies decaying movement speed for 4 seconds and 460 magic damage on the next 3 basic attacks or ability hits. That's a lot. That is 120. And again, it's a 1 to 18, which I still really, really dislike. I really, really would have liked these to all be 10 to 18. Or like 9 to 18 or whatever, right? But like, I think it makes the tooltips better. Love it a lot. It's let's give the squad some move speed. And my whole team does 150 more damage. Now, to be fair, my whole team does 150 more damage is about the same as if we scroll all the way up, we do 150 to the enemy team. Like, this is in the same order of magnitude. Night Harvester is arguably more damage, but Shurelya's can be focus fired. If you're like, let's kill this guy, everyone can hit them all at the same time. Now, yeah, it still takes 3 attacks and abilities. You might not get it all. It might time out. There's totally other stuff going on. The cooldown is, in fact, longer. It's not really 1-to-1, but it's in the ballpark of the same amount of damage as Night Harvester. It's in the ballpark of the same amount of damage as Night Harvester. Legendaries give 2.5% move speed. Now, we had a fighter mythic that gave 3%, so I kind of dislike that this got nerfed down, but whatever. It's not a huge deal. Yeah. This is pretty solid. Now, there's no damage on it, but yeah, it is. I mean, if you're Sona, if you're Yuumi, if you're Nami, if you're Braum, if you're Nautilus, all of these work. Now, as a support tank, are you buying this instead of Chemtank Turbo Tank? I know I had that one wrong. Who cares? You're probably buying this instead. But yeah, I mean, this is let's go engage. Let's do the thing. This seems solid. We then have Locket of the Iron Solari. Again, 2,700 gold. Kindle Gem, Aegis, right? Kindle Gem and it still ended up with 20% ability haste, which is just coming out of thin air here. But Kindle Gem, Aegis, health, haste, but now it's armor MR instead of mana regen move speed. Health 350, health 200. But 30 armor and MR, way better than 150 health, so this is a way tankier item, right? So just on the base stats, this item is absolutely tankier. This one has some regen and some move speed, sure, of course. This one is tankier. And grant nearby allies, 252, 420. Plays it as a shield, decaying over time, sure, whatever. Grant nearby allies, 5 armored MR. I don't know if this counts yourself or not. I don't know that answer. And the mythic passive is to increase this by up to 8. So it's 13 armor and MR to the team by the end of it all. So yeah, I mean, in all points, this is, hey, by the way, this item is durable. Also, here's some ability haste because go play League of Legends, right? Durability, 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 durability. Here's some ability haste. If you need to be tanky, you buy Locket. And what's great, right, is, I mean, let's think about how much people were complaining about, like, assassins are OP. How could we do anything? Zed's gonna kill us. He's gonna turn invisible. We can't. It's like, my Braum built Locket first item. My Braum built Locket. Are we good? We're good. Okay. Great. Also, I have 10 more armor. I undo a serrated Dirk, right? Like, this is so good when you're like, oh crap, we're gonna get one shot. It's like, Pog, you get to rush Locket. That's great. Mythic number 3, Moonstone Renewer. Dish out constant heals that ramp up over the fight, 2,700. Kindle Gem plus Bandle Glass Mirror. Bandle Glass Mirror is AP health, no, it's AP mana regen haste. Bandle Glass Mirror, by the way, is atrociously costed. You spend so much money on the haste here. Bandle Glass Mirror is a garbage item. Kindle Gem is like second worst, by the way, in terms of paying for haste. So the combine here sucks a lot. You're going to power trough hard building this item. I just want to point that out real quick. But it's AP, right? I am actively healing my teammates. Ergo, I must be an AP user, right? I must be Karma or Nami or Sona or Janna or Yuumi. And so, hey, if you want to play the real Enchanter play style, where you're not, doing the Locket burst, you're saying, no. We're gonna spam these heals out. You're this instead. So, when affecting champions with basic attacks or abilities, so this is, I am spamming heals of my teammate, I am auto-attacking, I am using Sona Q, whatever. When affecting champions with basic attacks or abilities in combat, restore 30 to 60 to the most wounded ally on a 2-second cooldown. Each second spent in combat with champions, so this doesn't stack if you're passively healing, like just, spamming W like back in base. This is if you're actively in combat with champions, dealing damage, taking damage, whatever. This starts to ramp up. And it ramps up to 2.5x. Which is only takes like 4 seconds? Like this is 4 seconds in combat, it caps out. That is quick. 4 seconds in combat is I light up my second Soraka Q. That's not hard. So, and we get ability haste, which I think totally lines up. Sure, so it's another item that can give you 40 ability haste. It's like 30-ish CDR in the very end game, which yes, could be hard to do, but still. But, this, and by the way, like these items, it's the same for Locket. I think it's the same for Shirelius. It's the same for Moonstone Renewer. Almost always, these effects, are ally levels, right? So I can be a level 10 Janna, and I'm doing 60 healing per tick to Aurelia or Fiora. And it's not really 60. It's actually times 2.5 that. It's 150 health every 1.5 every 2 seconds. That is very, 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 very good. Like it and there is a real chance this item is not good. Because this is not that much healing, right? It is, call it 100 on average. 100 healing every 2 seconds. So what does 50 health per second give me? Well, I mean, you have to it's like 5 seconds per champion to be as good as Locket, assuming you are going to get value out of Locket. Can you get there? Yeah. Is it that far off? Maybe not. I don't know. But if you don't need armor, MR, and more health, I mean, to be fair, it's the same health, but whatever. But if you don't need armor, MR, here's ability power, here's some regen, and go jam into it. Might work out okay. Should be all right. And then we get Imperial Mandate. We get the empowered Shirelia's battle song without the move speed, basically. So ability power, haste, health, mana regen. So very much the exact same price point and stat line as Moonstone Renewer. Is actually literally identical. It is also Kindle Gem Bandle Glass. So you can choose at the very last second to go Imperial Mandate or go Moonstone Renewer. And you say, hey, abilities that slow or immobilize a champion. That slow or immobilize. So Karma Q, Wall of Pain, I guess. Deal bonus magic damage and mark them for 4 seconds. Ally champion damage detonates that mark, dealing another 60 to 100, and granting both of us some move speed. So I have, on a 6-second cooldown per enemy, by the way, 120 to 200 damage. Per spell, per enemy. Now, it has AP on it. That can feel awkward for Nautilus and Braum and Leona and such. But, I could buy this on Cassio to team fight with. Lulu, sure. She slows maybe 2 people. The Whimsy is technically a slow. And, again, it is the kind of item you buy when you kind of only buy one AP item. Because it's so poachable. This is buyable on support Malphite. I mean, this is buyable on top Malphite, theoretically. Yeah, it's pretty awkward, but... I mean, 6-second cooldown for that much damage, it's way worse than Sheen, but, as soon as you get Rylays, you're in there. Zyra has her E-plants. What's the normal time for a support to complete one of these? I'm not sure exactly. Lux does it. This feels like a solid, Karma, Lux support thing, where it's I really can't afford getting all the way up to, Riftmaker or Ludens or whatever. So here, buy this. That lines up. I think that works out. Now, it's going to be hard for Brand because until Rylas, you can't do this. You have to land the Q stun, which, look, let's be clear. I play a fair bit of Brand support. You land a Q stun every minute and a half in lane. People play around it. You don't buy the... to be fair, once you're then in team fights, because this item comes in later, yeah, okay, but we'll see. The end of the day is we'll see. I want to point out, by the way, support items, if you go all the way up, count as legendaries. Supports be the first class of all classes to get a legendary, a mythic passive on a legendary. Bard, yep, the passive and the Q works. There's a lot of good options here. Darius, he totally slows. All right. So, this is the end of kind of part 1. We've gone through the mythics. We're 2 hours in. There is more to do. Let's take some quick time. Actually, we'll go through this real quick, okay? We're going to go through this because we have to. because this is going to be the primary question we're going to have. So ability haste exists now. This is the question I got a lot on in chat while covering these items. Ability haste is a linear scaling cooldown reduction. This is probably the paragraph you actually want to read. Right? CDR hyperscaled, whereas ability haste scales linearly. It scales in the way that armor scales. It keeps doing the same thing more and more and more and more. It just keeps doing it. So I'm a fan of this. It is a good thing. I like it a lot. It is a positive. It allows them to remove the cap on cooldown reduction. It allows them to have these items be more balanceable overall. And it allows you to feel good about just getting 10 or 20 haste and not feeling like you have to go to 40. Vamp has been changed. Lifesteal now works on hit effects. So Rune King doesn't need to be special case anymore. Wit's End, fully lifesteals. Rageblade, fully lifesteals. KLE damage on hit, fully lifesteals. This is a big deal. Senna's 20% bonus damage on hit passive, that lifesteals. This is a pretty big upgrade. There is now Omnivamp, heal from all sources, and then there's a subclass, which is Physical Vamp, which is heal from physical damage. KLE isn't magic, doesn't matter. Whatever. As long as it's an on-hit effect and not like the waves coming out, that counts. Now, to be clear, this should probably still not include the AoE on Jinx rockets. I think. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure. Lifesteal, by the way, already worked with things like Nasus Q. A lot of those things were already coded in. So there's a lot of champions where you're like, oh, it's like, well, it's the same. But possible. Physical Vamp, though, obviously quite nice. Heal from all sources, cool. Critical Strike. Here's the big thing. Marksman got nerfed. Well, kind of. Marksman got nerfed pretty heavily. Crit damage is now a 75% damage amp and not a 20% damage amp. Which means that Critical Strike chance is only 75% as good as it used to be. Because if you had 100 AD and 100 crit chance, you would add 100 extra damage on every auto attack. You now only add 75 extra damage on every auto attack. So they nerfed AD carry's unique more damage multiplier by 25%. Now, to be clear, AD carries very rarely hit 100% crit chance. It was not common. But one other thing happened. You notice that none of these mythics were Infinity Edge. So a large number of AD carries functionally had a 2.25x crit damage for the entire game. That is now a 1.75 crit damage for the entire game. There's an asterisk here. We'll get into it later. But that's worth bringing up. This is a fairly large nerf to AD carry damage output. Anyone who builds crit. Now I want to talk about, avert your eyes, what happened to ability haste. Oh, we didn't cover gold efficiency here on these. We can do that real quick. You're actually paying a fair bit for your passes, by the way. I mean, most of these are 80-90% efficient, but Shirley's Battle Song, because move speed is a cheap stat and mana regen is a cheap stat, is way down here. I mean, hey, like everything that it gives, they're good, but they're ultimately cheap, and so this is what the item lives at. But obviously, the active is incredible. Mythic passive is not too bad. Yeah. Locket's very good. Moonstone Renewer is very efficient. Imperial Mana is very efficient. Okay. So let's talk about some ability haste and cooldown reduction stuff, okay? So here we go. Here is the ability haste chart, okay? So before you were capped at 40% CDR. So you were capped out, okay, not counting the 5% cooldown reduction rune, which maybe puts you then here. So let's look at things you can actually buy, okay? So 5 ability haste is basically 5 CDR. 10 haste is basically 10 CDR. The easy breakpoint to remember is 25 haste is identical to 20% CDR if you're starting out your build, okay? And the way I'm mathing it out is this is the cost break-even point. Now, that's not really true, unfortunately, because they didn't change the cost of Culliford's Warhammer, they didn't change the cost of Kindle Gem, they didn't change the cost of Fiendish Codex. So you are kind of still paying the same amount for ability haste. Like, in a way, they have kind of just strictly nerfed cooldown builds because, for the components at least, you are paying the same amount of money. And to be fair, in the early game, they're basically identical anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Hope that makes sense. But, considering the fact that they have items that can give you like 45 haste, it's like this item gives 20 and 5 per unique, 5 per legendary. There were no 40 CDR items in League of Legends ever, but there are 40 haste items in League of Legends. There also weren't any 29 CDR items, right? Like, this is literally uncharted territory for items to do this. So it kind of got nerfed per point, but like, we're not stacking Warhammers. We're buying real items that give 30 haste sometimes. 30 haste is 23 CDR. And so you are functionally really capped at 45 CDR. You could actually literally never go above 45 CDR outside of things like Ultimate Hunter, but you can get above 80 haste. You can go to 100 haste where it's like, you know, it's the same as 50% CDR. This is how this works, right? Ability haste is additive. It is you cast 5% more spells, 10% more spells, 50% more spells. If you cast 50% more spells, it's like your cooldowns are lowered by a third. You can cast 50% more spells over the span of 2 minutes. If you cast 100% more spells, it's like your cooldowns were cut in half. Can you cast 200% more spells? I mean, theoretically, if you stack enough CDR, maybe it's possible. That's how it works. Basically, early ability haste is not nerfed, and ultra late game ability haste stacking can now exist. I like the change. I think it's a good thing. I'm also going to scroll up, and we're going to talk about how ability haste is priced. So, this is how much gold you're paying per point of ability haste in every single epic that gives haste, okay? So, Bandleglass Mirror, Caulfield's Warhammer, Fiendish Codex, Glacial Buckler, Kindle Gem, and Aegis of the Legion. Those are the only items in the game that aren't legendary or higher that give ability haste. And after accounting for health and armor and AD and whatever else, they cost between, oh yeah, and by the way, like, Fiendish Codex is just like broken OP, 14 and 36 gold per point of haste. So pick a number, right? At the end of the day, pick a number. And sorry, this is per I think it's, yeah, per point of haste, right? And so, okay, it averages to 25. And to be fair, by the way, my calculations for the price of cooldown reduction pre-patch was CDR costs this, right? 1% of CDR costs 25 gold. And I'm choosing to say that I still think it's correct for ability haste to be cheaper, because ability haste can never be point for point as good as cooldown reduction. So in my mind, even though like Riot just straight converted these items and it said, nope, this is what it costs now. This is where we are. This is what we got. I'm kind of holding on to saying, look, if we're going to measure things like the old world, kind of, I'm going to call ability haste as it costs 20 per point now. Is that weird? Maybe so. Maybe I really should be costing ability haste at 25 anyway, and just saying, nope, that's the number. We should use 25. It deserves to cost more. That's a valid point, you know? And yeah, like you could look at these data tables with 25 being the price point instead, and it would mean that, you know, Frostfire Gauntlet, you know, instead of being multiplied by 20 is multiplied by 25, and look, the efficiency changed. Whatever, right? So let's move on. So now that we're here, do we have Q&A we need to do, or are we good for us? Is there any like further confusion here in chat before we move on and talk about the legendary items coming out? Does Imperial Mandate work with Nami's E on an ally? I don't know, actually. Does ability haste stack from the same component items? From what I have seen, they don't have unique passes on them anymore. So I believe you can, in fact, stack them. Is there an aura stack to block it? I don't believe so. I believe there are no other ally auras in the game.